we are on with Jay Shaw and Nick Karadza.
So, and then Jay was just sharing me. So what was your Christmas gift from your daughter?
Oh, so my daughter got me for Christmas, she got me a t-shirt that says, "I don't use Google. My daughter knows everything."
Yeah. So my latest one.
It's respect. She got.
I actually wore it to school when I dropped her off when it was like +5 there last week. And she was just put her head down. Embarrassed of her dad, so good times.
Perfect.
So that's what she gets. And she's not going to.
Yeah, exactly. She's going to buy that.
So I don't know how she got into this. But my oldest daughter's got into this habit of buying me a t-shirt like that for every birthday, every Christmas, Father's Day, like everything. She finds one, and the latest one was, "I'm awesome like my daughter," and she's like, "Are you going to wear it?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I only go to the gym in them really, right? And people at the gym are like, "What? Like, where do you get all these t-shirts?" I'm like, "They're gifts. They're all gifts from my daughter." And there's like,
I can see how much you value them. You're wearing them to the gym. It's your gym. It's your gym t-shirt, dude.
Well, what was the first one was like, "With a body like this, who needs hair?" And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Alan. That's great." I was like, "Yeah, that's great." So trust me, there's a wide range of things.
Well, thanks for dressing up today for the podcast.
Yeah,
that's great.
You both have fancy sweaters on. These are what did they like? I like your collared shirt that buttoned up with the tie.
I have to look poor. I'm a property manager. Right?
Oh my God,
that's a good. I mean, look, I always used to. When my first BMW, my wife was driving a Civic still at that time, and I was taking her Civic to go pick up rent. I didn't take the BMW, right? So yeah.
I take the service van. We have a cargo van, so every so often when I can get it, I take the service van and drive it around. So,
yeah. And you were Jay. With I guess we won't name the particular property here, or we just give vague details. But there's a tenant that's mandated. Somehow it's in the lease that he has to pick up rent cash. If that's in the lease in Ontario, you have to do it.
I believe so, right? Like, I mean, you can't really dictate how they pay rent. You can only. And I've always said that, like, as long as they pay rent, I don't care. But we took over management of this property from another property manager, and basically in the rent it says they have to pay cash and they have to be issued a receipt upon delivery. So every single month I have to drive down to the property, knock on the door, make an appointment. And the other thing they've done is it's a triplex. They've installed cameras all over the place. So it's like
the tenants have.
Yeah. So it's sometimes they.
Nick, I don't want to mention the property for other reasons, but you know this property and you know who owns this property in Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
go on. Yeah.
Can we say if it's a member?
Yeah. I think I heard you guys talking about it.
But it's. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I like doing property management, because every day is different, right? And it forces you to really how to deal with people, right? Because this business, whether you're self-managing, whether you're a property manager, it's about people. It's not about the bricks and mortar. It's not about the 1, 2, 3, 4. It's you have to get to the root of what the issues are, what the problems are, and how do you solve them, right? And it's interesting. We were talking about that with our team this morning. We do training once a month. We were talking about tenant-related issues. So at our company, we refer to them as residents, right? It's a step above tenants, and it's just there are customers.
That is a nicer way to refer to everyone, yeah.
Well, there are customers, but at the same time, they're paying a premium rent. Like, I know last time I came on, we talked about what we were able to get for like main floors and duplexes and stuff like that. But they expect they're paying a premium rent, so we should be delivering a premium service. So that's one of the things that we were talking about is like problem solving. And we started off the training with, what are 10 things that really kind of contribute to better customer service? So we went around the team and like things like empathy, problem solving, solutions oriented, stuff like that, right? Because this business is all about people. It's not about bricks and mortar. And sometimes the residents just want to be heard. So
I want to go back to this cash and cameras thing. So I want to come back here, but I'm just thinking, I'm like, there's some funny business going on in that property for sure.
Do you have an idea why they installed the?
Because they're nuts.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
It's just that. You got it. So we took over management of it. They were already in there. They'd been there for a month and a half. There's a plethora of issues. We've now engaged a paralegal who we all know very well and who has basically taken on the case. But there's a whole bunch of issues with regards to Let Nick know how long the N5 is.
It's 11 pages.
So the N5
11 pages
in 45 days.
And this is grievances that are disturbing the enjoyment of the.
It's kind of like Festivus on Seinfeld,
They've
right?
been-
It's the airing of grievances,
So
right?
this-
Got a lot of issues with you people.
So hold on, they've been there for 45 days and there's 11 pages of grievances?
Yeah. Well, no, not of grievances, of things that they've done.
Who you put this
No,
in there?
no, we
Jay's a hard no.
hard no. We were
Good find, Jay. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. Right. When we screw up, we screw up large.
What's the and since we're just talking about this, what is the latest status of the tenant board? Because I know through the pandemic and everything shut down, everything got delayed, and then over time, it's been some time now. We've been hearing it's easing up slowly.
Yeah, I think it's getting better. Like, I mean, we haven't been there in a while, thankfully.
That's interesting. So through all the properties you're managing, you have not had to go.
Well, no, I didn't say that. Like, we haven't been there lately, right? Like, I mean, we've gone there for issues like non-payment of rent, other things like, resident 1 and resident 2 fighting, like things like that. So, I mean, the latest that I've heard, it's roughly about 6 months, but I could be wrong, right? I mean,
That's what I heard. And last time I talked to Kelly, she was saying about the same. She's like, sometimes it goes a little bit sooner, but
then
ballpark that. Yeah.
But then we just got something over Christmas or before Christmas. We had a T2, which is a tenant-related action brought against us.
Oh my God, I've never heard of a T2.
Right.
So how long did that take to get there?
So this is the thing. So I reached out to the tenant. I'm like, hey, I was under the impression that all the maintenance things were issued, because we saw on the form that it was filled out in July. She wrote back and she's like, yeah, that was July of last year. So we only got the T2 or the settlement conference or whatever it was.
Oh my gosh.
In December. So it was like 18 months for that.
So everything had been fixed.
Right.
But you're just getting the notice now.
Yeah. And she basically said that was from last July. Like, everything's been done and we consider the matter closed. Like, she's like, I tried to, cancel it when I got the notice too, but I couldn't get through on the Landlord Tenant Board phone. So I think it depends on what it is, right? I think like on things like that, it's slower. I think on, notices of non-payment, it's a little bit quicker. It's roughly, funny how we say quicker in 6 months in the same sense.
Well, because it's a gong show. Like it's a pathetic display of what of government incompetence. Like there's no other way to put it. Like it's gone on for so long, and when they shut it down during COVID, you knew there was going to be problems, and the fact that it's taken them this long to fix it is just it's a joke.
Well, didn't you guys? I know you guys went down to Florida recently. Didn't you guys talk to property manager down there?
Yeah, and she freaked us out.
She was confused.
When she said at one point she said, Nick actually just recorded for Rockstar members. They're going to get that recording, a talk with her. She at one point looked at me and she said, if we decide we want to renew the tenant. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second.
You didn't know that.
Yeah. You can decide as the landlord if you want to renew the tenant. And she was confused when I explained here that we can't do that. And she's like, oh, you guys are like California.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess if that makes you understand us, then yes, we're California, you're Florida.
Yeah.
And she was like 45 days.
Yeah.
That's the latest. And generally cash for keys is really low because tenants know if they don't pay, they're going to get out. Yeah. So cash for keys is like $200.
Well, and it goes to a court of law too. It doesn't go to a tribunal.
Oh, I never checked. Oh, right? Yeah, she was talking about that. She was talking about that's right.
You actually sit in front of a judge and you actually need a real estate lawyer, right?
Oh my gosh. Cash for keys, $200?
That'd be amazing.
Can you imagine that here?
Yeah, they said, well, it's a lot of things. Yeah, even having the evictions, because afterwards when you get the judgment, they're like, well, we don't really have problems with that if they don't leave because they know that we're going to get the judgment because of the way the laws are structured. That
so no one even really
don't stick around. They're like, it happens on occasion, but really they get their stuff out of there and gone because they know that the judgment's coming.
But a lot of the challenges with that, you look at some of these cases like non-payment of rent, if it's consistent, or like, this property that we were talking about where in 45 days there's 11 pages. If you were in Ontario, and I know this would never happen, but if you were to issue a notice of non-renewal, that would solve probably half of the backlog. And we would probably be at something like 90 days. Like 90 days is 3 months. Like that cuts it in half. Like even that is a little better, right, than a month and a half. But it's like, put the power, we have to have some balance, right? Checks and balances, and we have to have balance between the landlord's rights and the tenant's rights. But it's swung way too far, right? Where it's like, you have these landlords that are being held hostage by these tenants and they can't get them out, and they, appeal. And it's like, one more chance and one more chance.
But how do you do that? So I agree with you, it makes sense. But with our political system right now, the way it's structured,
they'll never do it.
Well,
they don't have the courage.
Well, it's not just the courage. They can't get the votes. With less and less people being able to own properties,
right?
And I'm not trying to trigger a Bitcoin talk from Tom, okay? But with less and less people,
sorry, did someone say Bitcoin?
But with less and less people being able to own them, more and more people are renters, more and more people are going to vote for that which benefits them. So it's almost, the chances of it going in reverse seem slim, because you would need a pretty big overhaul. But then at the same time, you look at that take Florida as an example. You look at that there and you think, well, there's a good chunk of people that are renting there as well, and they haven't changed it.
Well, they were an interesting example on many fronts, because we started freaking out also about rent control, and they have no rent control.
They have no rent control.
But on the flip side, where the market takes care of itself, because there's no rent controls, there was a lot of people who built a lot of property. So right now, in certain areas of Florida, they actually have quite a bit of supply.
Yeah.
And guess what the rental increase this year is in the area of in that area just outside Jacksonville? 2%.
Yeah.
So no regulation. And before, during the pandemic, it was going really high. Like they went up to 25% one year, raising rent because there was no supply. So then that signals to the market, to developers, oh my gosh, the new rent is this amount. I can now afford to go buy and buy some labor, buy some material, build some properties. New supply comes on. And now it kind of settles down any more rent increases, and you have new supply. Whereas here, not only does the rent control prevent really purpose-built rentals being built, existing properties that need renovation, if you have to spend a lot of capital expenditure to increase the value of that or fix up the property, you're kind of trying not to, because you can't raise the rent to justify the new expenses.
But maybe that's the compromise, right? You leave rent control. You also have the 2018 loophole, right? Which does spur purpose-built
Can you
rentals.
explain that? Sorry.
Yeah, so the 2018 loophole is basically any new purpose-built rental, including newly constructed basement units, is exempt from rent control. So this year is 2.5%, right? Anything that was built after that, there is no loophole, or there is no rent control. So you can raise it well above 2.5%. But, going back to kind of what you were talking about, it's like you want to balance rates, leave rent control in, and give landlords the opportunity to not renew the tenant, right? Everyone's like, oh, well, it would create this and that, and people would be homeless. And it's like, no, they can go and find something else, but it would promote good behavior. And not all tenants are terrible, don't get me wrong.
No, it is the minority. Right. I would say the vast minority.
It's 5%, right?
And just like there's bad just like there's bad landlords.
There are bad landlords.
So it goes both ways. Not like every landlord's perfect, for sure. I mean, look what's happening now with people renting out mattresses, and you see ads for sharing a mattress. Like, it's just this ridiculous things, right?
Utility rooms, right? Utility rooms.
Yeah, like it's just some of the stuff that's going on now, like especially with to international student stuff. It's kind of gross.
My favorite student rental story ever is one of my friends who was at Mac was renting out a room that was behind the furnace. So you would go into the basement, then there was proper bedrooms, but he was renting out a space that you had to go duck underneath, like past basically the furnace room.
Yeah.
And what they had done is put a cloth behind the furnace.
Where Harry Potter lives, right?
Harry Potter was there.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, I saw him.
Shared the room?
Yeah, he was there. There was another tunnel there, and there was other things going on there too. Gremlins coming out of the... Yeah, that was a real room.
And that's a major save. I mean, especially right behind the furnace. Like, I mean...
Oh my God, it was a disaster. And then another one, another student rental, I'll never forget, they had the bedroom, and to get to the washroom was basically a tunnel. Were you there with me? It was a drywall tunnel that wasn't square. So the ceiling was kind of like crooked a little bit. The walls looked, plumb, but the ceiling was crooked. And then you had to duck down. It was only like 3.5 feet. And you had to kind of crawl through there, and you would pop out the other side, and you were into a full-size washroom. You don't remember that one?
No, I don't.
It was the weirdest one. I'll never forget that. I'm like, what is happening here?
You guys have the best stories.
How is that a house? I remember kind of looking at this thing going, what is this? I can't remember why that had to be like that, and the structure of the house was crazy. Can you believe that? Anyway.
But that's why some of these municipalities have licensing, right? Like the city of Thorold, which is in Niagara, That's why they brought in licensing in 2017 for like people that were doing this, all the properties that were near Brock University, and people were renting out like utility rooms next to the furnace. That's not a...
Oh, they were outside Brock too?
100%. Well, wow. All the student rentals at Brock are typically in Thorold. Like there's one pocket, in Glenridge, which is kind of near the university, but a majority of the student rentals in St. Catharines that are close to Brock are in Thorold. And that's why they brought in 2017, they brought in licensing.
Are you noticing a lot of international students in properties either you manage or that you're just hearing that are renting?
Yeah, so we're doing, we've gotten a lot of international students, but we've also done a lot of international leasing. In the last 6 months, I've done more international leasing than I have in the last 6 years. And
so what do you mean by that? Someone new coming?
So basically people coming to Canada with either a job or no job from countries like, we've placed tenants from Mexico, India, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Ukraine.
So legally arriving here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And they either have jobs, they are either coming for school, or they have cash in hand and are looking for, a better life.
And your screening we've talked about this briefly.
Yeah.
What can you share what your screening process is or part of it?
So
how different is it than a regular person?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like the interesting thing, being a realtor as well, is I have a lot of realtors that reach out to the management company or to me personally, and they're like, and they typically work with international clients from a particular country, right? So one agent that I know, she's Portuguese. She gives me everyone from Brazil. I have another woman, she's Spanish. She gives me everyone from Mexico and Spain, right? So it's really interesting. And it's like, I've asked them a couple.
So far, it's not adding up. She's Portuguese, getting everyone from Brazil. Then your next example was Spain, getting everyone from Mexico.
No,
but then you threw in Spain. So then,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So, but like
I get it. They speak Portuguese in Brazil. Like,
right.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing is like, you ask them, I'm like, how are you getting access to, and they're all very cagey on how they do it. But like in terms of how they find these.
Yeah, so I guess these Canadian realtors are running ads in those countries that help them get property in Canada.
We had one of the properties we just picked up is it's a Brazilian couple that went in there, and they actually went for another unit first. And it was similar. And the person there, the landlord of that unit, said because they were international, they were here for about a year, almost a year and a half, I believe. And so they didn't have a long track record here. He's like, well, I want a security deposit. And the agent was like, well, you actually can't ask for a security deposit. Like you can't mandate that. And he's like, no, I'm not mandating it. I just want them to offer one. So because that's
a smart answer.
Yeah, but then they didn't. So then they just walked away from him, and then they
probably wise to move on.
Yeah, and I think she said it was much easier dealing with us dealing with them. So it made a difference.
Yeah. And so what are you doing that's different in these scenarios?
So I think the biggest thing is you need to mitigate the risk, right? Because they're typically not coming to Canada with a job, with an Equifax credit score or anything like that. So we have to find ways to mitigate the risk. And it's interesting, like with some clients where it's like you basically come to them with it, and at first a lot of them were like, no. And this is kind of where I, would use some of your lines, right, on immigration. And, this is not, where I basically say to the investor, it's like, look, immigration is coming, right? Like, and using some of the numbers that we've talked about, right, in terms of like, 40% of immigration is happening,
arriving in Ontario.
Is arriving in Ontario. And of that 40%, half of it is landing in the GTA, right? And the GTA is, really it's the GTHA, right? The Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. So it's, Toronto West. So it's more so, okay, how do we mitigate that risk, right? They don't have T4 income, right? They may or may not have a job. They may have money in the bank. But how do we mitigate the risk that they may or may not have a job and they may or may not have a credit score? So we have to find ways to work around that, right? And basically do that. Sometimes we put them on a Zoom where it's basically like, okay, like meet the landlord, ask some questions, and I'll prep the client to be like, here's some questions you should ask. But I remember like the first one or two I did, and one of the agents said to me, they were like, Jay, like they're coming to Canada for a better life. They're not coming to game the system. they don't know what the Landlord Tenant Board is, and they don't care. And if they were to run out of money, they would just leave.
That's a good point.
Right. And that really was kind of like the hammer over my head, because part of me was like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Right. So it was kind of like, this is where, you put on, like, you take off your property management hat off and you put your agent hat on. It's like, okay, like, if we're going to do this deal, how do we do it together? How do we work together? Because at the end of the day, it benefits both of us because we get paid on that deal. Right. But at the same time, I have to effectively represent the landlord and protect the landlord and their interest. And they have to do the same, right? Like Nick talked about, right? With that.
What more? So then just putting them on a Zoom and getting their story, I guess, is what's helping the most. Just having communication.
That's part of it. But then it's like, the other thing that I always tell investors is that you don't want to set people up to fail. Can they afford it? Right. So there's other things that we do, and I think we might be talking about that in a future event that we're going to do together. But it's just more so, how do you kind of mitigate that risk, right? So, I mean, there's a few different things, but it's more so, the two big ones are, credit score, which, a lot of investors are like, oh, I need a 680 credit score. And it's like, well,
holy smokes.
They have no 680 credit. There's no 680 credit score, and they may or may not have a job, right? Or a guarantor, or like we've even had.
So this is a regular thing that you're doing.
It's been very regular over the last 6 to 12 months, right? And I'm amazed, right, with some of these realtors. They just reach out, and especially with the way the market's been the last year, more agents than not have reached out to me directly. Hey, I'm on your website, because we put all of our rental listings on our website. Hey, I'm on your website. I see you have 123 Main Street for rent. Can I go and show it? Because a lot of them will know that I will pay commission, right? So it's been really interesting where a lot of agents have transitioned with the sales market kind of drying up, if we can call it that. They need to transition to something else. So a lot of them are doing leasing.
Wow, I'm just thinking of all the ways different population growth streams are happening in Canada. You got international students, our just straight up immigration is strong.
Well, there
are a lot of people coming.
Well, just the NPR numbers not from students have grown quite a bit too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You mentioned something about the rent increase from the 2018 date, but that's just to clarify for anyone listening, because I think that's only on the first tenant that applies, right?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I think we should.
I feel like we've gone down this rabbit hole like 3 times, and I think always you and I think of it that way, and I think we're always wrong on it.
So anyone,
I know we need to verify this one.
No, let me look it up.
Okay, this has come up with us. I swear to God, every time it comes up, we always kind of get a different answer. I feel like
my understanding, and I could be wrong, and if I am, I'm happy to be overruled, and I'm sure if I am wrong, I'll get a nasty email from someone, but my understanding is that the 2018 loophole is for any and all tenants for any unit built after 2018.
Let's see. Nick's on the case. Let's see what he finds. And then in the meantime, Jay, I just want to transition a little bit to a conversation around rents, just straight up dollar price on rents. How have you seen it since you've been here? Let's just call it the last 6 months. Are rents stable, down a little bit, up? What are you seeing? Are vacancies up? A lot of more listings available. Yeah. Give us in the market and explain the markets you're talking about. What markets would you be talking about when you answer this?
Yeah, so we service the Hamilton Niagara region. What we've seen is rents for the most part have been stable. We've seen some, depending on the particular property and unit. Like I would say, like there's some areas where it's been down like a little bit, but like negligible, like a couple percentage points. But a lot of it depends on kind of, the area that you're in. Like one city that we operate in, Welland, is that there's a lot of supply. There's a lot of supply.
A lot of new supply, a lot of investors creating supply from existing resale.
Both. There's at one point throughout the past year, there was something like 125 private rentals available for rent on rentals.ca. So that became challenging, where it's like we proactively reached out to our clients to be like, look, there's 125 units. We send them a link so they can verify it. We need to differentiate ourselves, because if you look at them all, it's the same floor plan, it's the same finishes.
And how do you differentiate in that situation?
So you have to find ways to do that, right? So maybe it's things like, offering a rental, like an incentive or a signing bonus. Or
funny, we haven't done that kind of stuff in so long. People have forgotten that we used to do that kind of thing. Back in 2000, I think maybe around 2011, we were doing incentives like that. Like even some people were offering first free month and that kind of thing. But
yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
What I was going to say is when we started renting out, but Nick has the information. I'll just share that it's on this very standard for us to have 6 to 8 weeks to fill a rental property.
Yep.
But then in the last couple of years, it got so crazy. I guess with the pandemic and stuff, people went down to 6 to 8 hours. And now that it's gone back to a typical 6 to 8 week time frame, everyone's kind of losing their mind. And online, I see some posts saying how there's so much supply and it's taking over a month to find, a tenant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's really what we've always dealt with. Like it's going back to the 6 to 8 week time frame is what it took us to fill properties. That's kind of normal, but people are calling that as if the sky is falling, and we're just kind of going back to like historical averages. It's just not been insane anymore.
Yeah. So between now and March, so basically between, we're recording this in January, but between September and March, it's 6 to 8 weeks. That's what we tell all of our clients. And then our busy season is April till September. And between that time frame, it's 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. And it depends on kind of the area. And
then we always had lulls, like always around December leading up to Christmas. It was hard to fight against Santa. So you lost people's interest. And we always found a lack of demand in the later half of June. We didn't know if it was just schools ending, or what it was for any vacancies we dealt with. If it was the last couple of weeks of June, for whatever reason, took us a long time to find a tenant.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was leading into the summer or what it was, and people had already found their place for September 1st or something, but that was always a slow time for us as well. What have you found?
I'm not convinced either way.
I know every time we go into this, I feel like that's when it happened.
No, so the answer when I asked this question before was, it's kind of lengthy. There's multiple points to consider before making the determination. So of course, so it's not just like a black and white thing. And there are, when you look, but it is section 6.1 of the Residential Tenancies Act. And when I went there and looked, it looks like, Jay, I believe you're correct that it is.
Boom, 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 boom.
No, that I think, but
it depends.
I'm not it's like a weird thing. So
we're not willing to give you the crown of king.
Spoken like a true.
I'll give you the crown. I mean, I hope that's the case. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to battle you on that one at all.
Or I'm going to get in trouble. Same person you're reading that from.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But then when I went in, it seems like it doesn't seem like it's like a one-time thing. It does seem like it's an exemption across the board. I don't know why I still had it stuck in my head that it was a one-time
has to be a new unit built.
Yes.
After
2018.
I think it's November
15th, I believe, 2018.
If it's a new unit built, if it's a unit is defined as
there's
a million. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's like an apartment building. But the other thing, at first, no one really realizes, and I'm sure some investors don't realize this. Like, for example, one of my properties in St. Catharines, we just added a secondary unit in the basement. That is covered under that, even though the house was built in 1970.
So if you're renting,
but it's with stipulations, I think, from what I was reading.
If you're renting the main floor, it has to abide by
rent controls.
But if you have a new unit in the basement, legal second suite, ADU,
provided it goes by these stipulations and section 6.1. Don't everyone
section 6.1.
Yeah, we're not lawyers, so this is not legal advice.
Yeah, it's messy. It's messy, but yes, it seems there's a solid chance that it can, but it'll depend on where the entrance is, where if that entrance existed before, what was used for.
So everybody has to put on their lawyer hat and read section 6.1. But it would mean that also, like, I guess, garden suites and laneway housing additional.
Those I think are a little bit more straightforward. I believe those ones.
It's a separate thing altogether.
It's a new structure, so conceivably that would.
But then it still depends on.
But then there's no rent control if a tenant stays. There's no rent control.
No, the rent increase?
Yeah.
Yeah, the rent increase does not apply.
Yeah.
In those cases.
It can be above 2.5.
For sure for the first tenant. 75% chance for the second or more.
What about the third one? 50%?
Third, yeah, it drops 25% every tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So
that fourth tenant.
The new place that was built that you just closed on.
Yeah,
there's no rent control.
No.
How have they allowed that? we're in socialist
No, but
Canada.
they used to.
How
No,
we're doing that.
Well, hold on. That was just put back in place. It used to be when we were doing this. Do you remember the date? Do you remember the old date? 90 something, 98.
Yeah, 96 wasn't it? 96, 98. Yeah,
because that used to be the date. Anything after 96, and then who got in power? I guess the Liberals got in power provincially.
They took it out,
and they got rid of that. They said, no, we're closing that.
So this is Doug Ford's government to put it back in.
Yeah, so he came back in, and they put it as of this date, this 2018 date. So they just basically moved forward from the 90s until now.
Because that was the argument, right? Because none of the developers were, like the government was like, we want you to build purpose-built rentals, and they're like, screw you, I'm not doing that because I'm not going to make any money, and I can only raise the rent 2.5%. So then Doug Ford heeded that call and basically said, okay, we'll put the loophole back in.
But that'll change the dynamics.
I like how Jay calls it a loophole.
Well, what do you want to call it?
I don't know. Proper.
But it'll change the dynamics pretty quick when that eventually changes back.
Because I guess that some government's going to rip that back out. Because it's weird to tie it to a date, 2018. That doesn't seem like the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an arbitrary number. But you'd think that it's going to, I mean, I don't know. But it just changed. The incentives all change. Like people won't, like one of the biggest challenges, look at student properties right now, right? So one of the big benefits of student properties that you can see over the last couple of years, besides how rents have exploded because of like abnormal immigration, just even remove that, is that every 3 years, typically 2 to 3 years, right? The tenants will move on and you get to reset your rents at market rents. That's generally what happens with the student properties. That's like a benefit to student properties.
Right.
It's good and bad to everything. The downside of like a long-term tenant is like they're paying way under market rent. Now they might be there for a long
like we have.
Yeah. But they're great. But they're great. They've been there, you know what I mean?
Take care of the property.
Self-liquidating asset, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But that's you do have now an underperforming asset because of these. So then it's less incentive for people to be able to provide this type of housing, because in some ways, if you look at it, we're providing subsidized housing.
That is the right way. Of course. Well, that is the way to look at it.
Yeah. So us as private investors, and not just us, many investors.
Yep.
We're the subsidized housing solution. The government's too incompetent to be able to figure out anything, get their head out of the wrong butt.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you look at what's going on now in Canada, right? With interest rates climbing. Like I have properties that I bought in 2016. That tenant is still there. Can you imagine what they're renting it for and what my
you're
mortgage
subsidizing
is?
now.
Totally, right?
Flips both ways. Interest rates drop, then you're generating cash flow from that property. Flips the other way, and that's the madness of centralized planning. But and that's what you get.
And that's what I think a lot of us are.
Not even from the interest, because the interest rates matter for sure. And I'm not even talking from the cash flow component. I'm just talking about what market rent is versus the asset, whether it's real estate or anything else. Right? If you rent cars and the cars are renting for whatever, $150 a day, but your cars can only rent for $50 a day for whatever reason, you now have assets that are underperforming. Their value is then linked to that.
Yeah, it's like if you're doing Uber, you're always getting the market rate for your rides. So whatever you're doing, you're getting the market rate. It's not an underperforming service because you're always getting market. Whereas in real estate, once rates are locked in and controlled from a central authority, but the costs associated with the property kind of fluctuate, you can have an underperforming asset. It would be performing at the same, against the price you purchased it at. It's always going to be working.
But you're still winning, but then, right? You both of you guys talk about this, right? If you own assets, you're winning, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like you may not be winning now because it's like we always talk about kind of, there's appreciation, there's mortgage pay down, right? There's
tax efficiencies that you can get from
cash flow, right? So we're only taking really one.
We're driving in on this one point, and you're right. I almost think that sometimes when I go to a bank machine, and I haven't done this actually in a little while.
Is there bank machine?
No, I've gone to bank machine, but do they show a savings button anymore? Before it used to be checking savings.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah, I think so.
And I always remember pressing the TD green one when it was a button, not like on a screen now. But I'm like, why don't they just replace that with a picture of a house? Because no one's savings in their savings account. Like the savings account now has become real estate. Yeah. So like they shouldn't have that. It should just be checking account and a picture of a house. And you press the button of the house. And that's where your rent comes in. That's where your mortgage is going out of. But let's face it, like the savings account in Canada, unfortunately, has become a house. And the reason for that is because it's a second order effect of the madness.
Anything but cash in a savings account. I got an offer from one of the online banks that I have an account with, and it was like, you can for the next 6 months or something, any money you put in will earn an interest rate. I think it was 5.25, 4.25. Anyways, like based on today's environment, considering it's like just sitting there in cash, I'm like,
it's huge.
That's actually like good. I'm like, what does it actually earn now? Because rates have gone up. So I figured it would be half decent. And those online banks typically pay more interest.
Right.
0.7%.
No.
I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm like, it's still 0.7%.
I guess does this go to how they
crazy.
Yeah, how some of the bond market has reacted and the way their deposits. Yeah, why wouldn't they want more deposits?
I know it's pretty zero. I was just surprised that it was still at 0.7 because typically the online ones offer, they don't have the overhead, they offer a little bit better rates. And I'm like, wow, it's still under 1 even in today's, environment. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, there we go. It's not a savings account. You should have a picture of a little house, or if you want to save in Rolex watches, you should have the option. I would like the savings icon on my TD banking to show something else, Rolex watches.
See what he's trying to do here? He's trying to sway the conversation over to Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, I thought you were going to say to the Maple Leafs. So you have a second thing here.
At 0.7, I could get a bag of Hershey bars.
Wasn't that
and sell it?
Wasn't that the mortgage interest rate?
No, I'm trying to honor Nick and not bring up Bitcoin, so now I'm just bringing up socialism instead.
Amazing.
It's another way.
Can we get some granola in here? That'd be great.
I heard socialism's the answer. It's just because it was never done right before.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's trendy now.
Yeah, it is trendy. Yeah. Oh geez, I won't even go down there. Jay, I wanted to talk to you just about for someone who hasn't heard this in a little while, or maybe they have properties and they haven't rented them out. Can you just give us ballpark in Niagara? I like hearing that from you.
Yeah.
Whatever, and I know you have to generalize, and I know it's area by area.
Sure.
But can you give us just ballpark on rent if it's different property styles, just some numbers so people can hear them?
Yeah, for sure. A majority of our clients are, legal duplexes. They buy brick bungalows and then convert them into secondary units. You're typically 3-bed, 1-bath on the main floor and a 2-bed, 1-bath in the basement. So main floors, 3-bed, 1-bath are typically going for roughly, I would say $2,300 to $2,600 for the main floor, plus utilities, right? And then in the basement, you're pretty much between $1,700 and I would say $1,850 plus utilities. So adding that, you're roughly at about, what's that? Just over $4,000, roughly.
45, something like that. 46.
Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty good. So that's Niagara. Single family homes, like 3-bed, 2-bath, you're roughly, I would say $2,700, $2,800 plus.
And that's
utilities.
Niagara region as well?
That's Niagara.
Okay.
Right. Hamilton, negligible. Like you're usually like a couple $100 off, but like the interesting thing about that is the purchase price, right? So in Hamilton, you're roughly about $100K more, right? St. Catharines, Welland, that you're roughly about $100K less. And in Hamilton, like I said, like that 23, 25 is roughly about, 24 to 26 or 25 to 27 kind of deal, depending on that, for a main floor. And then same thing with the basement, right? Like you were seeing more 2-bedroom, 1-baths, for about $2K.
Wow, this metropolitan area is really just going to go. I used to say from like Durham or Oshawa over to like Hamilton. Now it's really going to be like Kingston eventually to Niagara. Well, it is now.
Well, look what happened in the London area.
London. I can't believe London. We stayed away from London for years other than student rentals because we would actively tell people it's just not going to appreciate.
Yeah.
London, there wasn't just say St. Catharines. There was no appreciation for
St. Catharines. There was no appreciation. London, there was no appreciation. Windsor, there was no appreciation. All these areas are getting appreciation.
But we're saying it's going to go over to Niagara, but really it's going to go over to Niagara on the south part of it on the QEW, but on the top part, if you're thinking Durham to wherever, it's not going to end where, because
we used to never go more north of Barrie.
Well,
but Niagara's the equivalent of Brantford. It's going to go right over to London and,
Yeah.
Well, one of my joint venture partners on a property I have, him and his wife, moved to Napanee, and they've been buying up Belleville like crazy for the last 2 years. Like
that's a great area.
They've been doing duplexes. They're now doing garden suites. He was a big software guy with Intuit that owns QuickBooks. Him and his wife basically quit their jobs. They're doing real estate full time, and he basically has investors being like, he blasts everything out on Instagram, and he's got investors being like, I have this, let's do this. So, and he's done extremely well there.
There's a lot of nice I don't mean home pockets, like just nature things, like around Prince Edward County and the coastline and that type of stuff. Like to your point, it's a nice area. Sandbanks, provincial parks out there, right? There's a number of things just in that greater area around Belleville. It's kind of, it's like
even driving up to Collingwood now, you see new subdivisions like Shelburne there. You see that? Like there was nothing there before. Now there's a brand new, well, there was houses there and a no frills. And now all of a sudden there's a Starbucks and a brand new McDonald's with multi-lane drive through, LCBO, a brand new food land. Like everything's there now.
I always laugh because I see the main new development that's been going on there for a little while is Greybrooks kind of involved in that. And whenever I see the Greybrooks sign, I'm like, I never invested in that project with them. But I look at it and I'm just like, wow, I could have invested in this project. I would have had no idea what Shelburne was.
I know.
Now I'd drive by and be like, oh, I was involved.
I participated in this. Jay, that's interesting. You brought up that about those people who quit their jobs and stuff. How did you make this transition to property management from the corporate world? Like, can you just walk through that? Because you never had.
I came to your class and you created a monster.
Because
is that what I was supposed to say on that paper you told me to write down?
Yeah. It's basically what happened, right? Like you went into the corporate world, you started buying properties, and then you just you decide you're going to start a property management company?
So a couple of things happen, right? So, I mean, obviously I started out as a member at Rockstar, learned all the fundamentals of buying my own properties. I have my own properties, so I built my own portfolio. And then my wife at the time, she was a realtor. And then basically, was working with investors. And then it was we were working with a lot of investors from Toronto. And, they liked the idea of building wealth. They didn't like the idea of taking the calls, picking the tenants and dealing with the day-to-day. So she came up with this great idea that, Jay has a property management company. Jay did not have a property management company. So Jay quickly had to go.
You were assigned the property management role.
Well, and the other thing too was this, right? Like when we had our own properties is that she was very good at finding the properties.
Okay. You were naturally inclined to managing them.
Well, I was more cleaning up the mess, which was filling them, making sure they cash flow, dealing with all the maintenance, right? So that was my job and I became very good at it. And then when she started working with investors, that's kind of when I was like, okay, so I started managing other people's properties. And then I was working in the pharmaceutical industry. And then in 2018, that industry was, contracting, right? So it was very cyclical, right? A new CEO would come in, would be there for 5 years. They would leave, a new CEO would come in, bring in a new leadership team, and they would bring in their own people. So every 5 years I was getting a package, bringing in my fleet car and going to the next company to get a new fleet car and work there. So after it was about the third time in 2018, I got packaged out. And I just didn't go back to work. My son was just shy of 1 year old, so I got to be a stay-at-home dad for a little bit, which was awesome. I
remember that era, yeah.
And I used to come to the meetings with the bucket carrier and bring him to the meetings, and that was he was a bit of he's 6 now, so he's now he's on 2 feet, so it's like chasing after him. So I mean, that's basically what I did. I basically took the package. I was running the management company more as a side hustle. And then I was like, okay, let's build this up. So, that was in 2018. I started the company in 2016, but in 2018, it was like, okay, let's build it up. And that's really how the company started.
And then how are the software programs these days? When Nick and I tried to go down this path, that was back in 2009, 2010 era, the software packages were just absolutely horrendous. Just for managing maintenance requests or even just literally paying out rent and generating good reports. Have they come a long way?
They're getting better. The challenge is that they're all American, right? Number one. Yeah. Number two, the property management industry in Canada is light years behind where it is in the US.
Is it?
So we've, I think that's really kind of been our weakness, is just the property management software hasn't been there. We've tried to work. You
seem to have navigated that so well.
We have. That's the biggest weakness. In terms of managing maintenance requests, we, I'll tip my hand a little bit. We use Monday.com, which is a project management software. I think you guys use.
We used to use Monday for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you guys use something similar.
Yeah, correct.
But that's what we've been able to do. And that's really kind of served as our hub.
So all maintenance is going through Monday.
Goes through there. And we have a board that has everything. We're able to kind of send out, give notice, send emails. It has an open API, which, can connect with pretty much everything.
And why would you be connecting that to, are you connecting that to some of your back-end billing stuff?
So we're connecting it more to, other software. So like we use Gmail, MailChimp, stuff like that, right? So it's got, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, and I'm not a big techie, it's more like how do we use, the importance of an open API and how that works and how that
That's wild that you made that leap.
It's baptism by fire. You just have to kind of like, I know you guys were both in the software industry before.
So you use Gmail, and with the API into Monday, then you can pull up somebody's service request?
Well, we can serve notice. So like basically they fill out a form.
Who's they?
So the resident will fill out a form if they have like a leaky faucet, something like that. Name, address, through
a website.
Yeah, it's a Monday form.
Okay.
And then and then there's something there that basically is like if you feel upload a photo if you think it's helpful.
Okay.
And then they click submit. When they click submit, because we've linked Monday to Gmail, they get an automated email right away that says we've received your maintenance request.
Awesome.
Someone will be in touch with you in 24 hours. And then what we do is once we change the status in Monday to be like assigned, the resident gets another email. Your work order's been assigned.
Oh,
Someone
awesome.
will be in touch with you.
Every stage along the way.
Right.
Love that.
And then
I'm sure the residents love that.
And then when we enter the time, it sends them another email that says the plumber is coming, Thursday between 2 and 4.
Oh my gosh, they're loving that.
And then
if 2 to 4 doesn't work, can they reach back out to you?
Typically, like if it does, like they'll respond, like they can respond, right? Because it comes as an email. It says,
So now there's no communication. You're streamlining things nicely there.
It's been a work in progress to get there, and every so often it's like, okay, well I can't be there, or I have a dog, or I have this, and then it's like we can rebook that. But the whole point is really to improve that resident experience. And that's really one of the things that I've always focused on with my team, because, we talked about those numbers, $4,500 a month that these residents are paying for, a property that, $600, $700, which is not, still a lot of money.
You mean 600, 700,000 to purchase it?
To purchase it, right? So those numbers, when interest rates eventually come back down, are going to cash flow for the investor. But if the resident is paying that, they expect a premium service, and it's indicative of us to do that, to give them that premium service. So that's what we're trying to do is just,
I hope you don't break, dude. You're speaking so nicely about all this stuff. Property management's tough. It's tough. Full respect.
It's tough
for you to come this far.
It's very reactive.
Yeah.
So it's hard. You can be proactive in your systems, but the issues in the business are constantly reactive because people are only reaching out to you when there's something wrong.
Yeah. And the landlord's pissed off because they have money to spend that they didn't plan for. Tenants are pissed off because there's a problem. Everyone's pissed off, and they're all pointing at the property manager. But the systems that he's creating kind of make that a little bit better. There's less communication. It's very streamlined. There's less communication.
It's not perfect by any means, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think the challenge is that the bar is so low, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a challenge, but it's an opportunity for any landlord, right? You don't have to be a property management company like me. This business is about people. It's kind of what we were talking about before. So it's like if you can put yourself in the resident's shoes, because the thing that happens is once they're in, there's a flow, right? And the flow is that everything is calm, and then something happens to upset that flow. It's typically, a maintenance thing. Something's broken, something happened. So now they're stressed. Now they're like, when can I get it fixed? I want it fixed, right? And then it's like, okay, let's see when we can get you there. And what we've done internally is like, look, this comes in, we have to get back to the resident within 24 hours, right? And then they submit a maintenance request. That maintenance request has to be done within 5 business days. It's not to say that it's going to take 5 business days to fix that leaky faucet.
Yeah, but that's the goal of
right.
And if everybody knows that,
right. And then the other piece of it is, obviously like the caveat to that is that if it's an external vendor and we can't control that, right? Like they're busy, they're backed up.
What are you doing with landlords and just communicating with them? Do you collect? You're collecting rent, and then when do they get the rent? How are they communicated on that side?
So there's a couple things, like basically rent's due on the 1st. There's no exceptions. If that doesn't happen, we're issuing what's called an N4 notice for non-payment of rent. And then what happens is between the 5th and the 7th of the month, we're dispersing rent. We disperse rent through direct deposit. And then that takes, anywhere between 3 to 5 business days, depending on their banks and holidays and banks and weekends and stuff like that. So typically between the 10th and the 12th, they get their rent.
And how are tenants paying you mostly?
Other than that one property where I have to go
in cash.
Yeah, where I have to go and, get my dollar store receipt.
But I think,
book.
Nick, you're still doing that on one property, right? Don't you?
I use it to go for a walk because it's relatively close to my house. So if I ask,
it's not totally.
If I'm out of the country, I'm like, hey, can you just e-transfer it to me? He will, but for some reason, I guess he's an old school guy. He always gets cash for me. I think he's a contractor. I don't know if he makes cash too, or I don't know what the deal is.
It's fine. It's just I'd never seen that before, and I looked at the lease. And
it's not in the lease. Like you must pay cash.
Are you for real? Right. So, but like most people, we either do direct withdrawal or we'll do e-transfers. So we were kind of like talking.
What's the split on that? E-transfers versus direct withdrawal. Most people don't like direct withdrawal.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, it's like 80% e-transfer.
Yeah, okay.
We're trying to move people over there to kind of automate our business a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because, we just had January 1st, right? You can imagine how many people were late, right? Oh, I forgot. I'm still I'm still on vacation mode or whatever, right? So so that's a little bit different, but it's, it's 80, I would say 80-20. I mean, the other thing too, going back to kind of, owners and how we're communicating with owners. One of the things that we started doing this year with our vendors, and we're starting to roll it out. We started rolling it out in Q4 with our owners, is on maintenance, and it's taking maintenance from reactive, as Nick was saying, to proactive, right? So one of the things that we were doing with some of our vendors is that when they're in the property, we're asking them to look at some of the capital repairs, right? So for example, like our HVAC guy, we're like, so every fall we go out and we service the furnaces for the winter. And we've been doing that for years because that's something that I do in my properties. Because we all know that the furnace breaks on the coldest day of the year and the air conditioner breaks on the warmest day of the year. So what we asked our HVAC guy, we started with him first, and we said, can you, when you're in there servicing them, can you give us an idea of the age of the furnace? And when you do the servicing, can you give us an idea of how much useful life is left? Right? And he's, well, it depends. And I'm like, just ballpark it for me, right? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years?
Smart.
Right? And then we started that with our plumber. It's like, when you're in there, can you take a look at some of the plumbing, right?
That's great.
What we're trying to do is add value to what we're offering our owners. Because like I just finished saying, the furnace goes on the coldest day of the year.
You're so right. My air conditioner, the last time it went at my own home, was the hottest day of the year. And Nick, I forget where we were going, but I was going on some guy's trip. Yeah. And I was leaving the family and with the air conditioner broken. So I quickly went to Canadian Tire and I got a couple of big fans to try to suck the cold air from the basement and drive it up the stairs. Useless. Let me tell you, that didn't help at all. But I got these 2 fans and I had them staggered in the stairs trying to suck up the cold air and spread it through the house. I had to do something because I was literally like, hey, I'm going on this awesome vacation. See everyone. I hope you don't melt.
Love you. Bye.
But yeah, I think it was 5 days later and I was still getting calls of yeah, that's right. I had trouble. You know what? It wasn't the air conditioner. It was the motor on the furnace that blows the cold air.
Yeah. Oh, you had some special one too.
Yeah, and they couldn't fix it. Yeah. And it took basically the day before I got back, it got fixed just perfectly for me to come home.
Of course.
That was wild.
We had a property where we were getting that morning. We were told that, hey, we should really change this furnace out. It's on its last legs. And I owned this one with a friend and he's like, no, we're not going to do it. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care either. And we left it and we got an extra, it must have been 6-7 years at least on that property.
You and I had a rent to own, and I remember on closing, we had no extra money for a new furnace, and I remember the home inspector saying, look, guys, this thing's not going to last another 90 days. Never mind 3 years or something like that. And we just couldn't do it at that time. And it was operational, safe and functional. Right. It was working. And it lasted the entire time. Remember, and he was convinced, I don't know if you remember this one, absolutely convinced this furnace is going down. And
right.
Yeah, you just never. But it's a good thing to know. The one thing that caught me when you were saying interest rates, when interest rates go back down, and I can't.
I know. When everybody's saying it's.
No, I'm not knocking on wood. It's just when everyone's saying this, I'm like, but I get it. I get where it's coming from because people are so used to low rates. I also get where the economists are coming from because the economists are leading the way in the banks, saying, well, interest rates have to come back down, but
You can't have real positive real rates.
But it wasn't long ago that interest rates, even where they are today, were like unheard of. And people were like, well, rates can't go down there. We need higher rates. But now that the debt has increased so much, it's like no one's saying it, like from the economist standpoint, no one's saying it, but why do interest rates need to go down? And it's because the debt's so high. Like it's the one thing that's missing in this argument, because
I know. Like when everyone's when he said that too, I froze as well.
When interest rates go down,
Well, they kind of have to, because if the debts grow, if real rates, which are interest rates minus inflation, are positive, it means debt on the real rates is growing faster in the economy. Can't have that. So you need rates to come down, because if inflation has come down, you can't have 5% interest rates and inflation of 2%, real rates are 3%.
Or you have inflation go back up.
And that's what I'm personally kind of in the back of my mind. I'm like, is inflation about to turn? Because I'm kind of convinced, like, okay, we have an 18-month window here where inflation's not going to just like do a V U-turn, like a sharp U-turn and shoot back up, where it is going to settle down for a little while and rates are going to be able to come down. But when they come down, and then the next round of this, so they come down, then more liquidity enters, which creates more inflation. But because the size of everything is so big, the size of the debt is so big, the next round of inflation, the next round of liquidity that flushes in is just mathematically larger. So now the next round of inflation is going to be larger, which means there's going to need higher rates than this round of rates.
Yeah, it depends where it goes, but yeah.
It depends where it goes. I just mean all the numbers are nominally larger. So everything's larger.
Yeah, but the debt was small. I don't know if I buy into that one, because when the debt was smaller, even as a percentage of GDP, I believe, when they hiked rates really high back in the late 80s, kind of early 90s. Rates got hiked very far that way with a smaller number. I don't know if that correlation really holds true to the rate matters with the amount that they put in. I guess it depends on the amount of the inflation to get it to slow down. But it doesn't matter the actual amount. Like if just because the stimulus is larger, if it actually ends up in consumer prices with the inflation
shooting up more,
because for 10, 12 years, whatever, we didn't have the consumer prices shooting up. But hold on one second.
But geopolitically, it's more than that, because it's just not just debt. Geopolitically, there's all these wars, onshoring of different manufacturing, either friendly shoring to a friendly country or onshoring directly to your own country.
Yeah, that's different. But you were talking about stimulus.
Sorry, but I just mean that's another factor in inflation.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think. Where I think the challenge is because inflation is still embedded in people's minds. If they cut rates too soon, and even if the housing market starts to trickle upwards, people still expect, prices, it's going to rebound. Like you hear all these people talking like, they'll cut rates and all goes back. And as soon as that starts, even if it happens a little bit, not just in housing prices, what's going to happen right away is people are going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to end up making this will be worth more. My line of credit.
And speculation comes back.
The renovations are going to start picking up. Material costs are going to go up. Yeah. Like if they don't.
Party on.
And it's going to just start driving it. And what's going to happen is it's driving it from a higher baseline, not from a higher price point. I mean, from a higher inflation baseline. Because even though they're saying whatever it is now, 3%, whatever crap they're telling us, we already know it's higher than that. Whereas it wasn't as high as it was before. So then we get that higher spike. That's why it's just interesting. I just feel like, we were talking about this the other day. I just don't think the sentiment is gone of people feel like, inflation's coming back. So if people get squirrely about it again, they're going to rush out and buy. The problems you just talked about, onshoring and geopolitical and all this stuff, that creates constraints, and then inflation drives again.
I don't think it's gonna so when I made that comment, I don't think it's gonna come back down as quickly as it went up, right? I think everyone knows the elevator analogy, right? It always goes up quicker, right, and slower to come down, right? If anything, if it does come down, it's going to be a quarter point. Then it's going to be 6 months. It might be another quarter point or something like that. Like I can't see it, every rate announcement down.
Unless I guess if there was some panic, some crisis of some sort, and they were just forced. But you're right. Yeah.
Right. But the other thing I think that we're seeing now with all of these holds, right? And I don't know what it's like here with some of the coaches, but more and more people are jumping back into the market, right? With every hold, we're starting to see
we're seeing more and more activity now as well. That's a good point. Yeah.
So
which is exactly that's why I'm like, that's
don't jinx it for sure.
No, I think that's part of the problem. I'm not saying don't jinx anything. I think that's part of the problem in a way.
Right.
I understand from our business is like, yeah, that's good. But I'm just like, longer term, is that going to start driving this inflation back sooner and bigger than?
It's sad that it's all just a psychological thing now.
Or maybe it's just comfort with the fact that rates are in the sixes, right?
And
that's what it is.
Nobody really believes they're going higher.
Yeah, and let's just.
So if we get a weird inflation spike and rates jump high, can you imagine rates instead of coming down like everyone expects, they jump higher right now? Oof.
Well, yeah, but that'll crush everything.
That will crush.
But I don't think they will, because the economy's like, that's on the housing side. Things are trickling up. In the economy in general, from the people that I'm talking to, not really. I mean, we'll see. But what was interesting is, and I thought about Tom, and we talked about this before we started recording, I think, is that is when I was talking to that supplier today, and it was a sign company, and they were talking about this sign that they installed, and I think he was saying it was cost $80,000, maybe it was 60 or $80,000 for this.
It's a nice sign.
Well, it's a big pylon sign. It was like 24 by 10 or something. So, and they and he's like, but he goes, that was 6 months ago. So like, the prices have gone up since then. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like we're living in this world.
If we're down to 6 months, that's pretty quick.
But I used to, but that's a world where like, I kind of just, it wasn't long ago that I would just kind of think about and reflect on countries where that was happening and what that was like. That's 6 months. And I know there's other countries where it's every day and, I think every month. But I mean, this is like, it didn't really happen the same way where people are like, hey, this price I quoted you was like,
it's only
that was
valid
6 months ago. Yeah, not even that was only valid, because it would be valid less, but it's like, hey, just so you know, like we can't even compare that to this, because that was 6 months ago,
I think it's wild too, because I think sometimes Canadians will think that if for inflation to be a problem, there has to be like a different way of life. Like people aren't going outside and there's like panic in the streets. And a lot of people I speak to, I'm trying to articulate that no, like people go to restaurants still. Like if you look at Argentina with out of control inflation, or you look at Egypt that just had a currency devaluation that was pretty aggressive there, everyone's still living. And that's kind of the sneak attack of inflation, that you can be in the middle of like the currency just getting absolutely debased. But the day-to-day life just looks kind of normal, and everyone's life is moving along, so people don't realize it. And then 10 years go past, and it's like there's an income divide. That you have the asset owners and the non-asset owners, and it just materializes. But it's been this 10-year thing. That's why inflation's such
we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's why it's such a beautiful sneak attack. These goddamn bankers are sneaky. Got to give it to them. I got to applaud the bankers. You figured it out. Back to serious business with Jay Shaw on property management. So. Anything else that you want? So thanks for sharing about the rates. And we talked about kind of I'm curious. I'm really cool. It's cool to hear the amount of automation that you have going on, and you're kind of working on that. And maybe you can see gaps and stuff that you're doing.
Right.
But I don't think people are thinking the way you're thinking when it comes to property management. So it's kind of cool to see what you're doing. I especially think that's the case in this niche of people who own single family homes that are duplexing. There's not a lot of property managers who are specializing in that. And it really seems like you've carved out a niche. But what else are you doing? Do you manage other properties, just so everybody can get an idea?
Yeah, I mean, so like we manage up to about 20 units right now. So, I mean, we've got some small multis, right? We've got, single family, duplex, triplex, some, up to 10. And then we have a couple buildings that are, 20, 25 as well. So we do that. I mean, we were kind of talking before a little bit about kind of the preventative piece. And one of the things that we're trying to offer owners is like, we're trying to be less of a commodity and more of a value add for them, right? So it's kind of like, people are like, oh, it's, management fees and this and that. And it's like, it's a cost, right? And we want them to see it as a value, because like when we talked about like the furnace and that, it's like, if we know that furnace is going to go in 5 years, like we have instituted like a semi-annual review with our owners. And what we do is we go over, okay, here's your property. Here's how much you've spent on maintenance. Here's the average against all of your other property, or all of the other properties we manage. So then they can see like, okay, my maintenance is higher, my maintenance is lower. But the other thing we want them to see is like, look, like, remember when you got that charge for, the furnace inspection? Well, the HVAC technician says that this roughly has about 5 years left of life. Okay. Furnaces are going for roughly about $4,000 right now. So we got to start to put some money aside.
You're acting as a consultant to them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
you're an investor. You're coming from an investor mindset on them by planning this way.
But think about,
it's not usual.
You talk about your instance with that rent to own, where it's like you knew the furnace was going to go and you didn't have the money, right? Well, I hate, and this has happened to me many times, calling an owner and saying, the furnace is out and we need a new one and I need $4,000 and I need it soon because the tenants are on me, right? Because
it's winter. I need it tomorrow. Do you want your pipes to burst?
Right, exactly. And I know for myself, I've been in those shoes and I'm like, God, right? And it's like, and that's part of why, like in my property accounts, I've always had a buffer. But a lot of these, especially the newer investors, I don't know if they have a buffer, right? Like I disperse the money. Like we have a reserve, which is like,
sure, it's not covering a furnace.
$300. It's not covering the furnace. So, but it's more along the lines of, let's start to plan for this. Oh, and the air conditioner is this old, right? And it was interesting because like when I initially approached our vendors for that, they were a little apprehensive about it. They're like, well, Jay, like I'm not here to sell. I'm like, I'm not asking you to sell. I'm asking you
proactive.
Let's be proactive on this because, maybe there's an opportunity we work together down the road, right?
It makes selfishly on your business side, it makes the process of breaking the news to them easier because even if it goes after 3 years, they're kind of already expecting it because they've seen that a couple times. Yeah. So there's that aspect of it too, where it's like it makes your life a little bit easier because I know if I was one of the owners, I'd be like, okay, well that sucks. But you kind of mentioned that. I saw it coming. So my initial reaction is maybe a little bit less emotional than it would have been otherwise, where I'm like, God.
Or I have $2,000 in the piggy bank. I'll come up with the other two to...
I'm curious, and I want to give out your URL here in a second, but has real estate, from an investor, has it met your expectations? Has it fell underneath them? Has it exceeded, from any aspect, the management of it, the financial, like, are you happy you've gotten into real estate? Or like, is it really, do you think, helping you overall financially as an investor?
So I would say this, right? I think every investor over the last 18 months has felt the pain, right? Interest rates shooting up, like cash flow, all of that. Everyone, I started in real estate in 2014. I've only seen the good times. I haven't seen the bad times. I mean, I have... the
good times started in like 1996. So if anyone's been, there's been hardly any bad times.
And then, some of the investors that I work with on the sales side are like, call me when the market crashes, right? Like, and they've been waiting since 2008 for the market to crash, right?
I have one buddy since 1998. He's been telling me the market is going to crash.
Well, pre-COVID, like when everything started to dip, I was like, I had that guy and I was like, well, maybe I'll give him a call. This is as close as it's likely going to get, right? So, but back to your question, I think the reason I like real estate, like whether it's, investing, whether it's property management, is it forces us to be creative, right? Whether you're doing a deal, whether you're managing a property, I said it before earlier in the podcast, I'll say it again, like this business is about people. Right? Like one of the deals that I ended up buying when I was a member here was, it was one of the rent to own properties, right? Where basically the guy got, the rent to own letter and he was very religious. He was like, this is a sign from God. And like,
what rent to own letter that it's time for him to possibly.
So when we first started, we bought a rent to own property. And we put the sign out, and I was always worried about the sign. And I used to put letters in the neighbor's mailbox.
Got it.
Right, to explain what we were doing.
I forgot you did that. Yeah.
And that
everybody goes through that phase.
But that letter did two things. That was the biggest option payment we got, number one. And number two, we ended up buying his house and renovating the house in order to, and used it as a rental. Yeah, so by being creative and focusing on people, that helped us get to, the next stage in our investing.
What was the option fee on that one? Do you remember?
$50,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. No one believes it.
It was insane. I was just like, and I still have the picture of the check and I'm just like, and it was
Did
like,
that really happened?
Yeah. And it was just, I remember, right? Like bought this place in Niagara Falls. It was not a good property. Mike was our coach, phone Mike. I'm like, I'm following this guy back to Niagara Falls and he had like investors in the car.
I remember that. I remember when Mike called me and told me what you were doing.
And we're like following this guy. And
I think Mike told you who are you following? Didn't he give you advice of like, what are you doing?
He was like, oh, just be careful. Yeah. Call me when you're done. Right?
I remember that.
Nothing phases Mike, right? He's
no.
Like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Just drop me a pin so I know where you're at.
And had my daughter with me. She wouldn't even walk through the house. I had to carry her and it was But, you know, I mean, going back to it, like, you know, I had a really good job in the pharmaceutical industry, and 2018 happened, lost my job. And honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh,
because
cool.
What
man.
it allowed
cool.
me to do is really kind of focus, spend time with my kids, and, you know, build something that, you know, that I can run. Like, basically I've built a business around my life, not a life around my business. Right. And that's the biggest thing. It's
awesome,
given me the flexibility, the freedom. And, you know, I'm fortunate to have come across you guys, and I was talking
two-way street, man.
I was talking about the radio ads.
Yeah, because we're running some radio commercials,
right. And I was like, that was how it all started back then. That was in 2015, and you know, I mean, I've been really fortunate, like, you know, for my own personal portfolio and even the business, right? Like, just like, you know, work with a lot of members, and you guys have all been, you know, very good and gracious. And I remember when you tried to talk me out of it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because you were doing so much stuff, and like, anyway,
Jay,
I was great.
You sat me down, Jay. Are you really sure? Are you sure you want to do this?
Tom lets his biases get involved in other people's stuff. He's like, you know, this is not something.
Listen, I don't know if I would do what you're doing. Are you sure what you want to do? I know what's right for you.
Now you're the go-y advice you were getting before when you were quitting your job.
Yeah. Geez, totally. Jay, thank you. And it's such a two-way street, because now you're helping so many Rockstar, and I know you're working with lots of people, but you know, a large group of Rockstar investors work with you, and it's, you know, it's cool because we're all supporting each other. We're all playing different roles, putting on different hats, solving different problems in this kind of mess of real estate. And it's awesome. You know, we're all going to our own goals of, like, we all, what living your life on your terms looks different for you than for me.
100%.
But with all of this, we're kind of making it work between us. It's super cool, man. So welcomehomepm.ca is your URL, welcomehomepm.ca. If you want to reach out to Jay Shaw and his team, that's where you can go. You're onboarding are you taking new clients right
absolutely.
now? So welcomehomepm.ca. Any other contact information that you want to share?
No, everything's on there. You can follow us on Instagram, Welcome Home Management, and we put out, you know, regular content, videos. We got some funny videos coming out. So, but yeah, the biggest thing we're trying to do is add value, right? Is raise the bar in property management, raise the bar in education, similar to what you're doing. You know, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to, you know, work with you guys, like teaching the class here at Rockstar. It's lots of fun. And
by the way, you know this, we've told you this, let everyone know, we get incredible feedback from your class, like incredible feedback from your property management class. So thank you. We'll wrap it there. Thanks, Jay Shaw. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.